Welcome to the Gals Guide to the Galaxy podcast, where a group of gals gather for you one cool thing around our topic of the month. Is it ancient history? Is it breaking news? Is it safe for work? Well, that's up to each gal. All we know is that...
Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
Welcome back. I'm Leah, and I am joined by Bonnie, Katie, and Eden, talking about our one cool African gal. Now, Bonnie already talked about Wangari Maathai. Sweet. Hence the long pause. And Eden already talked about Queen Nzinga. Sweet. And then Katie talked about Chimamanda. Or is it Chimamanda?
Chimamanda.
Because there's the strong chim in there. The Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie.
You look at me and I look at Eden.
I know exactly. Everybody?
Yeah.
Do we have any kind of
The
confirmation?
pronouncer of all names, Eden.
Names are hard, but we got this. We got this. But before we dive back in, let's get to know something random about our gal pal. So I have a super geeky question because it is obvious that Wakanda exists. You guys had a cue. Wakanda forever! All right, there we go. Okay. So because the U.S. government listed it as a World Trade Partner, Suri has mad science skills, like she makes necklaces into super suits, right? She also has hand cannons with panthers on them. So what tech do you think Wakanda has already invented, but it's being hidden behind its invisibility cloak? Technology question. Technology.
How about I start?
Yes!
I know mine. And
Do
I don't
it.
want y'all to steal it.
Exactly. Yes.
I think they have figured out a way
Yeah.
to have a like something that looks like a hearing aid.
Okay.
But it's a universal language translator.
Ooh, that's good.
That way, when
We gotta be
people
close
talk
to
to
that.
you
Yeah.
in their language, I mean, hello, we've got Google Translate. Like, we
Right.
can't stick that sucker in our
In the
ear,
Yep, exactly.
you know, and carry it around with us.
Yeah.
And blah, blah, blah.
I've seen little handheld devices
Yes.
where it's like speak into it and then
Exactly.
it translates it to you.
So there's got
earbud.
and I'm sure there's an app for that because there's an
Right.
app for everything.
Of course.
You know, so I'm thinking Miss Shuri has a universal translator and she's being
Sweet.
stingy with it.
Exactly.
Could they be earrings though? Like, something glamorous.
I actually like the earring idea because
Yeah.
that
She
was
would
Wonder
probably do
Woman's
that.
thing. She had on the earrings, and those were her
I didn't
part of
know
her.
that, actually.
Yeah, she did something with the earrings.
Gotcha. There you go.
But I think she just knew a
Not
lot
that
of
there's
languages.
any
There's that too.
problem with hearing aids. I'm
Right,
just
right,
thinking
exactly.
the glamour and adventure. I'm going on James Bond because I've never seen this movie.
Okay, so we're going to have to sit down and watch
okay.
Black Panther together. 'cause
Yes.
it's
Sorry.
amazing.
They have a lot of technology.
They do.
Yes.
and they're a cloaked
Society. It's like-
location.
It's like a bubble where
Yeah,
nobody
so
knows how
nobody,
cool they are.
People just think it's a forest when really it's a thriving community, and they've stayed hidden.
And they have
all this time.
lots
They
of cool tech.
export vibranium.
Yes,
That's how
the
they've made
strongest
this
metal in the
money.
world. Exactly.
Yes.
You'd like it.
Oh, I know. I know.
She's like, oh,
And their king is a
superheroes in
superhero,
space.
so
Yeah.
how can you go wrong with that?
That sounds pretty awesome.
And they're like
Yes.
cats,
Yeah,
I
they're
love
all
cats.
kitties.
you know.
Crap, that's going to be a sidebound now.
You know what? I think I'm just gonna go then with cat ears that shoot lasers.
Ooh,
I don't know if
lasers.
that's lame, but
It's
I
a little
like
Austin
it.
Powers.
I can just,
Lasers with freaking laser beams
Beams,
from the
yeah.
top of their heads.
I
like
want
it.
a sharks with freaking laser beams on it. Yes.
But yes.
I want laser beam cats.
There you go.
so
I like it.
That's all
See?
I got, guys. Sorry.
There you go.
That's
I have
better than
seen it on the
bullets coming
internet.
out of their jumblies.
Right,
Yes.
exactly. The fembots.
Yes.
I kind of like that too, though.
Yes, exactly.
No offense.
Why not both?
I wish mine shot bullets.
I know.
That would be kind of fun, actually.
Yeah.
Bonnie,
Give new
what-
meaning to the concept of a bullet bra.
Ah, there it is.
Uh-oh.
Technology.
So I have two because I'm not
Yeah.
sure if one may not be politically correct.
All right.
My
I
one
don't
that-
think we're a proper jury for that now.
my one that you may have to take out of the show notes once it comes out of my
Okay.
mouth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is they know why like black don't crack? Like they have the formula.
Oh,
like,
girl.
Why?
We all know why black
great.
don't crack. That is not a
Wakanda
Wakanda
developed
secret. Nope. Everybody on this planet.
They just been keeping it from you.
We have.
And my safe one is freaking holograms. Why do we not have holograms yet?
Oh, yeah, true.
Like,
Help
we've
me,
been
Obi-Wan
watching
Kenobi.
Star Trek, and I'm like, why do we not have holograms yet?
You know what? That's true. I need to go.
See?
Forget escape room. I want the escape from reality room.
Ah, there you
Okay,
go.
I want to be able to go
Now we're talking.
and like I want to be able to have the hologram where I'm living in Wakanda,
Right.
you know, and like he's my man.
Right, exactly.
Okay,
You type into a program and he's mine.
right. Can I just be Nakia for a minute? Okay.
Right. Except with less resistance because
Yes.
she's a little resistant.
This is true. This is true.
I think it would be fantastic.
But yes, I agree. Hologram rooms. I like it.
What's yours, Leah?
Oh man, I wanted to say flying cars because for some odd reason it has always captured my imagination from a little kid. Where it's like, where's our freaking flying cars?
Yeah.
I was told to get ready for flying cars
was
when I was an
If
adult.
you watch Back to the Future 2,
Right,
which takes
which I
place,
watched too
we've
many
already
times.
passed the
Yeah.
year.
Correct, where flying cars were
Yes.
a thing, but no,
And the
they're not here.
Jetsons was supposed to be like 2005 or something.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So I feel like they have that. I mean, they do have like the little hovercrafts like already in the movie and
Yes.
things like that. So I think they have flying cars, and I think maybe they have already deemed them to be unsafe at any speed, and that we are not responsible enough for flying cars. And so they're like, yeah, no, we did that and it didn't turn out well.
Yeah.
So
I
we
was
have
listening to
regular
something
cars.
where people have already like prepaid for flying cars.
Oh,
Like they've already bought like their Tesla flying car.
right.
But they're wondering how they're going to police flying cars.
Yes, because it's airspace.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
like we can't release them because we don't have the police force.
But that's where you get the
these people.
Space Force.
Is that what they're going to be in charge of? Because
I have no idea.
You mean that Star Trek logo?
Yes.
Star Trek logo.
Because I've seen that before.
Yeah. Looks a little
But-
familiar.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, you want to know my one cool lady?
Yes.
Sweet. So my one cool gal is known as Mama Africa. She was a singer in the 1950s to her death in 2008. She was the most prominent African performer in the 20th century, according to Britannica.
Nice.
And then also just me. She brought African music, language, and truth to the world, yet she was banned from South Africa for over 30 years. So,
Oh, wow.
My gal is Miriam Makeba. Have you
Yes,
ever heard
yes,
you've heard of Miriam
yes.
Makeba? I have one of her CDs. She has like many of them, but
Yes.
here you go. There is Miriam Makeba. She is a musical journey. Are you ready for this?
Yes.
It is too fun. All right. So she was born in Johannesburg in South Africa. Her mother was Swazi and her father was, I'm going to try to do it, Xhosa.
Xhosa.
There you go, with the click, basically. So it's like, oh, yes. So Miriam was 18 days old when she was sent to prison.
What?
Uh-huh. Get this. So Miriam's mother, Christina Makeba, brew corn beer. And it was illegal for Black people to drink and especially to make alcohol. And so Christine was arrested and her infant child went with her to prison for 6 months. Right? That's a way to kind of start your life. So the first
Serving time
Wow.
early.
6 months. Yeah. And her mom said, be careful because if you start here, you're going to be back here many, many times. So now Miriam was born before the powers that be started calling it apartheid. But it was very much what was becoming apartheid. It just didn't have its little name on it yet.
Yes.
But it was strict and unjust laws that were already in place before the 1940s when apartheid officially started. Things got unbelievably worse when apartheid started. Some examples are interracial relations were completely banned. Movement was very limited. Education and segregation, also education of Black students was extremely limited on what they were even allowed to learn if they were allowed to go to school. Where you lived was subject to the color of your skin and the variation of your skin.
Yes.
It got just really specific. But South Africa became a terrible prison, basically. It was just absolutely terrible. In this world, Miriam's outlet was singing. that's how she tried to survive within this. She started singing professionally in 1954. She joined a few bands before becoming the lead singer of a very extremely popular band called the Manhattan Brothers. They were really popular in South Africa at the time. She toured with them all around Africa. One night, they met up with a documentary filmmaker. So, of course, I'm like, oh, documentaries. Lionel Rosen from New York was making a documentary called Come Back Africa. And he was featuring music around the area and in different regions. And he had Miriam sing a few songs in the documentary. Well, the documentary went to film festivals, and one of them was the Venice Film Festival. And she's like, I want to go. So she went. The film either won an award or just got a lot of buzz from it. Mm-hmm. So the government found out that this film existed. And the government wasn't aware that there was filming that happened about their country. And so not only did they ban the New York filmmaker, no big deal, but they banned Miriam from being in the movie. She was in Venice at the time and was not allowed to return back home. Now, unfortunately, that meant that her mother was there and her newly born daughter were also still in the country.
Gosh.
So she was trapped without being able to get back. So she did end up getting her daughter Bongai out of the country. She was able to do that. She was not able to get her mother out of the country. Bongai, her daughter, actually would later end up writing songs for Miriam. Mm-hmm. She actually wrote some of her more famous songs, or I would say the songs that Miriam loved more were the songs that her daughter wrote, because she sang them more frequently at concerts and stuff like that. But Miriam's father had died when she was 6 years old. So he had already passed on before her exile. Miriam's mother would die within the first year of her exile. Oh. And it was extremely hard on her to not be able to be there for her mother, and then also not for her funeral, to have that closure. Miriam did not sing about political music until her mother died. That was basically like, oh, screw this. Now I'm speaking about apartheid. Now I'm speaking about exile. Now I'm getting political about it. But she always said, and I saw this so many times in interviews that I was listening to, she said, I don't sing political songs. I sing the truth. And I love that, because that's an answer without being an answer. So yeah, she settled into America thanks to the Village Vanguard in New York and the documentary filmmaker that you could say got her kicked out of the country, but also at the same time, like, you know what I mean, was able to showcase her amazing talent too. So to get her a job. But also she settled in America because of Harry Belafonte. Nice. Have you heard the name before, Harry Belafonte? Yes. See, kind of, sort of. All right, I will let you know. So Harry Belafonte, because I'm always on the fence on Harry Belafonte, let me tell you. He's the one that sang Deo. You know the song Deo from Beetlejuice, if that helps.
Yes.
But Harry Belafonte, he introduced the Western world to Miriam Makeba. The duo actually had an album together, and they won a Grammy in 1965. The album was called An Evening with Belafonte and Makeba. And this actually made her the very first South African to ever win a Grammy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, right? So I loved it. She also appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show. Mm-hmm. So she was like major, because apparently that's like the stepping stone for musicians. Mm-hmm. Were you on Ed Sullivan? Okay. Exactly. That's what it is. Miriam even, Harry actually took Miriam around the world to introduce her to the world, and she was singing African songs. She was singing Zulu, and she was singing Xhosa songs, which was actually extremely lovely, because it's like, no, these are the native songs. He wanted you to hear them exactly how they were. She also hung out with, name drop warning about to happen in 3, 2, 1. Okay. Sidney Poitier, Nina Simone, Cicely Tyson, Marlon Brando, and Ray Charles. These were like her neighbors. These were like her best friends. These were like people she was always photographed with. So yes, she was in very, very good company and interesting. Yes. Like, I would like to be a fly on the wall and listen to any and all of these conversations. She was married to Hugh Masekela for a while. He was also an African singer. They had a wonderful marriage, but they always described themselves better as brothers and sisters. Like, it wasn't really a romantic marriage. It was just like, no, we get along and we like each other. Yeah. So they didn't, I think the marriage only lasts like 2 years, but they're always together and they're they're always like performing together. They have no
Right.
problems, no animosity and stuff like that. The documentary that I watched on Amazon has Hugh Masekela in it quite a bit. And he's talking about her like, that's my sister. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, that's right. I keep forgetting these two were married
Yes.
for a while. So Miriam got really political with her songs, but also with her actions too. So she put her money where her mouth was. She testified at the United Nations and actually asked the United Nations for an arms embargo against South Africa because those weapons would be used to kill her people, women
Yes.
and children.
Yes.
She's like, don't sell them guns.
Yes.
That will teach them. And it was a strongly worded address to the United Nations. And guess what? South Africa didn't like that, so they banned her a second time.
Double ban.
You're double banned.
Double banned. Because
But
that's proven
she's not
something.
even going there.
Correct.
So you already banned her, so now you're gonna like crank up the ban of a place she's not going to anyway.
Right. I think they, what was it? The first time they said you can't return. And then I think the second time they revoked her citizenship, which made her passport.
Okay.
So it got more severe. But really, technically, it's just a more severe
Ban.
Yes. But she was already banned. They also banned her records from being sold or played in South Africa as well. So that just
Like
means
that works.
it goes underground and it just makes her even more famous. So yes.
Yes.
She met many political leaders at the time. She was very much on the political circuit, as well as civil rights leaders. One of them was Stokely Carmichael. Nice. Yes. And so I have Stokely Carmichael's book, Black Power. I'm always very proud of my Stokely Carmichael book. So this is Stokely Carmichael. He's the one who coined the phrase Black Power.
Yes.
He's the one that made it infamous, basically with this book and his speeches around the world too. I love him. He was an original freedom writer. He was mentored by Ella Baker, and we have a Your Gal Friday on Ella Baker, so please listen into that. I'll put it in the show notes. Stokely was also a chairman of SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. He was right after John Lewis. So if you know John Lewis, the senator who was in SNCC, it was Stokely was like was the next one in line. Stokely was also an honorary prime minister of the Black Panther Party. He was honorary because Huey P. Newton, who started the Black Panthers, he was arrested. He needed some money, to get out of jail and for the trial. And Stokely helped raise money and awareness. He was not really in the party. I mean, Stokely was for Stokely. But he helped out and supported. And they were very much kind of like of the same mind and the same mission. So Stokely he was very vocal. He had a wonderful ability to piss people off. Sometimes it was the right people to piss off. Other times it was not the right people to piss off. It was very delicate. Well, in 1969, the reason why I bring him up so much is Miriam and Stokely got married. This unfortunately made her career in decline because of her association with Stokely. American radio started boycotting her music.
Dang.
Yeah, exactly. Concerts started being canceled, and the world got really, really stupid between the two of them. Miriam never blamed Stokely, but she said that other people do blame him. And she said in an interview, he had his mind and I had mine. So they were not necessarily of the same political views, but it was very hard to separate them out, and people just got weird and scared. The couple was welcomed into Guinea by the president of the country, and they set up home because they were really country after country is don't come here, don't perform here, don't come here, don't settle here. It was almost like another version of exile all over again. But in Guinea, they set up a lovely home, and they were married for 10 years. So, I mean, it lasted a long time.
Wow.
But eventually they did get divorced and separated. But when Nelson Mandela was released from prison, he encouraged Miriam to return back home. Come back home to South Africa. She never lost faith in the fact that she would return one day. She said that's what got her through. She just always had to believe that one day she'd be able to come home. She didn't know when, but one day. On the very first day that she came back, she visited her mother's grave. So she sat right there. She said she kind of laid on the grave like her mother was cuddling her, and she asked for forgiveness for not being there when she died. And it was heartbreaking. But in 1991, shortly after returning to South Africa, she put on a huge concert and she reintroduced herself to the people. Some would say she introduced herself, but her music was underground.
Yeah. Everybody knew who she was.
Exactly, right? Exactly. So, yeah, because anytime a record is banned, it means that people want to hear it more and that they share it with more people because it's like, this is not something you're supposed to know about.
Yep.
Yeah. So it was amazing. But she became like the role model, especially for African women singers right after. Like she was the generational, like, okay, I want to be a singer. I want to be a singer. Now I want to be Miriam Makeba. Now I want to be Mama Africa. So one of my favorites is Angelique Kidjo. I love her. I think she's amazing. She was almost my pick for my one cool African gal, but I actually like, she's still alive. She's still building a legacy. She's still like working on stuff. And also her book is really hard to get. It's like $90 on Amazon right now.
Oh, wow.
So it's like, I want to get it and maybe I'll find it at a used book sale, but she's amazing. But Angelica always says that her role model was Miriam. So I kind of wanted to like start at the beginning. You know what I mean? So I'm like, all right, I'm going to learn about her role model, who I was aware of because of Paul Simon, which I will get into in a second. But also for Angelique, because I just want to give her a wonderful shout out, is she was on Jimmy Kimmel and she did a version of Talking Heads Once in a Lifetime.
Oh my gosh.
With an African rhythm to it. And it's phenomenal. I'll put it in the show notes and I'll send it to you guys like directly. But it's
nice.
It's such a, you can't help but start dancing to it. It's really, it's infectious. And that's Angelique Kidjo. So, all right, back to Miriam. So she released 30 albums, 30 original albums of content and 19 different compilations. This one that I have on the table is actually a compilation of her stuff throughout time and things like that. But she was not on Paul Simon's Graceland album, but she was on the African concert that he did. So Paul Simon did a free South African concert while Miriam was still in exile, while Hugh Masekela was still in exile. And it was like right on the, are they going to let Nelson Mandela out? Kind of like thing, sort of thing. But she was on stage and she sang with Paul Simon Under African Skies. She also did a solo Soweto Blues and the Retreat song. And she went on tour with Paul Simon as well. So she's not on the Graceland album. People are going to be like, where is she on the Graceland? No. The song she sings with Paul Simon, Linda Ronstadt sings Under African Skies. Not really a great political thing to do. Exactly. I know. It's dumb. But Miriam's biggest hit was a dance song called Pata Pata, which is one of the most infectious songs and is still stuck in my head all the time. It's an adorable song. Miriam said in an interview she would have preferred that any other song would have been her most popular because that one was just a dance. It didn't have any meaning. Like, it was like, we do this dance, Pata Pata. And she's like, there's nothing there. There's no, but it's totally catchy. And ironically, it sounds very much like the Deo Banana Boat song by Harry Belafonte. And even though Miriam had been singing Pata Pata since the early 1950s, Harry's like, you have to do this song on this album as your big introduction to Western music. And they had such a big fight over it that after it was released, they kind of separated and had nothing to do with each other.
Oh, wow.
And when I heard the version, it sounds very much like Harry Belafonte's Deo. And I think that's kind of what it was. And he's like, no, you've got to have a catchy dance song that everybody just wants to dance to. And she's like, I wanted to say something. So I think that's kind of where the fight or the rift happened, if you will, between the two of them.
But if you think about it,
yeah,
the Africans that were sent to the Americas, not to the United States, but to the islands,
right,
and South America,
yeah,
they were sent there, and because they were in a small place because it's an island,
right,
or whatever,
exactly, yeah,
there was more communication and whatever, so a lot of times they were better able to hang on to their Africanness,
right,
in a way that people that came to what is now the United States, they
right,
couldn't do that because it's too spread out.
Exactly.
And a lot of times they came to the United States from one of these islands, so
right,
the deck, as they say, was much more shuffled.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So if you think about the fact that Harry Belafonte, he's got these African roots on an island.
Right.
And then she's, the music is going to have a similarity.
Right. Yes, exactly.
But I can understand why.
Yeah.
It's just a dance song.
I know. Can't we make the other one like the big
But
hit?
it's like cultural and
It's also a freaking adorable song.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm kind of like, we need the song.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, Mama Africa, Miriam Makeba, she toured until her very last day on Earth. She was in Italy doing a concert in 2008. She left the stage and collapsed with a heart attack. So on the stage singing until her very last day. Her ashes were spread. I love this story. Her ashes were spread over where the two oceans meet, to kind of embody her exile, the people that she learned and met while she was in exile and her home of Africa. She said she wanted to be able to find her mother, and she wanted to be able to find her daughter, who unfortunately died before her. So I thought it was just so absolutely amazing. She also said she wanted to be able to meet everybody she had ever met in her entire life, and to be in the middle of these two oceans was the best place for it. So I was like,
awesome.
yes, I know. So she sang in multiple African languages. This is where I learned that there was more than 2,000 African languages. And she would do it too, where she would go and do a concert and she would be like, what's your native folk song? You know what I mean? And teach me the song, because she actually learned English first by singing English 1950s songs and not knowing what they meant.
Yeah.
So she's like, just teach me the song. And then later she would learn the language as well. But she wanted everybody to feel seen and to feel appreciated and to spread the joy and hope and tradition, as well as sadness and, you know what I mean, and heartbreak and that sort of thing. So she was a powerful force. She was a guiding light. And the documentary that is on Amazon Prime is called Mama Africa, Miriam Makeba. So, and it's free because if you have Prime. So I highly recommend it.
Cool.
It's the baseline for my information besides listening to a crap ton of really good music. Because that is always fun. So I highly recommend that one and checking out her music. And I'll put music in show notes because it's always weird talking about a singer and then be like, yeah, I can't play anything. Deal with it. So have you ever seen her perform before? Did you?
I have seen clips of her performances. I've known about her for at least my adult life.
Right. I feel bad. It's been since Paul Simon. I mean, like Paul Simon, it always makes me feel bad. I'm like, I didn't need a white savior to like teach me about Mama Africa, but that's the way it happened.
Well, okay. So sometimes I know we might like to think of him in that moment as a white savior, but sometimes it's about who has the power to get to bridge the gap.
Exactly. He brought it to more people's awareness.
And so there's
a thankfulness for that.
Right. Yes. And so I think of that not so much as white savior.
I know, but I feel like I have to call it a little. Like, I don't want to ignore it.
Right. But I think of that more like, here's a
appreciation.
Here's a fellow musician from her perspective.
Yeah.
And a well-known, established white celebrity
who has connections
who is using his privilege.
Yes, exactly, for good, for
and
awareness,
so if you're using your privilege, that's not quite the same as white savior.
I know, exactly,
but I get where you're going with
there's
that.
Like a toe in it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So just a little bit, but
because in a lot of ways so is Harry Belafonte, just from a previous generation.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
Yeah. So that's why it's always like, it's close.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things. At least I was introduced.
Yes.
So at least I got to appreciate it. And then be able to separate and be like, all right, so now what did she do? And let me listen to her music.
Right.
Because she's a badass.
I didn't realize that she had the nickname, the Mama Africa.
It's the way she's introduced in the Paul Simon video. And I don't know at what point she started to adopt it, but I think it was when she was in Ghana. And I think is when she was touring specifically around African countries, because she wanted to represent Africa, not just South Africa, which she wasn't. Because a lot of people would be like, she's exiled from South Africa. It's like introducing her as what she can't do is, you know what I mean, almost diminishing. Cool. Yeah, exactly. So I think she kind of took on the moniker to be like, no, I want to represent this more.
Yes.
Of what I can do instead of what I can't do.
Totally.
Well, that wraps it up for us for African Gals Month. Join us next Monday as we kickstart Women's History Month with science. For show notes, links, and images from this week's show, visit galsguide.org. Want exclusive stuff like deleted bits and major bloopers? Become a Gals Guide patron today. Thanks for listening.